No sellout. The Negro still is not free. No sellout. The Negro still is not free. No sellout. The Negro still is not free. No sellout. Ghetto Boys, no sellout. All right, this morning, Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. Today is January 31st in the year of your Lord, 2020. We start the morning off with classic track, House Nigga, by Boogie Down Production. This is the concept of the house nigga, field nigga. The house nigga will sell you up the river, so to master, he'll look bigger, and when you're beat under a rock, he'll slither. Man, let me tell you something. KRS-One, House Nigga, from the underrated album, Edutainment, Boogie Down Production, Golden Era, Conscious Era of Hip-Hop. Then we heard a short excerpt from Malcolm X's speech on House Niggas, Field Nigga. We still have House. He said, you know, the Field Nigga hated his master. And I'm a Field Negro. Malcolm was a Field Nigga. We still have that class structure within the black community to this day, except now, instead of the house Negroes and field Negroes understanding their role in place, now we got a lot of overlap and confusion about, we got a lot of field niggas who celebrate and embrace the house niggas, follow and hope, inspire openly, unapologetic. Well, I guess we had that during the era of slavery, but anyway, Malcolm X house niggas. Then we had another track, True to the Game. And I know it's ironic AF to listen to in the year 2020 to listen to Stay True to the Game by Ice Cube, back when Ice Cube was riding around with Khalid Abdul Muhammad, saying he don't want white folks to produce his album, he don't want white folks to come to his shows. It's hella ironic, but hey, people change, man. Everybody can't hold the line. What do you want? And then that was followed by the dopest track on Grip It on That Other Level by the Ghetto Boys, No Sellout. Willie D, like I tell y'all every time, y'all keep, every time I say this, I got people in my DMs, I got people on my feeds, I got people on YouTube want to fight and debate this with me, but I think I just won this debate, hands down. Willie D, rest in peace, Bushwick, but Willie D is the greatest of all the Ghetto Boys. Now you show me a track that slaps harder than No Sellout. Show me, give me a Ghetto Boys track that come harder, more direct than No Sellout. I think I've won my case. I've won my argument. Willie D is the best of all the Ghetto Boys. And I know Action, a.k.a. Scarface, he gets more accolades. But in terms of, may not have the lyrical ability and the popularity of Scarface. But I mean, in terms of embodying what the Ghetto Boys stood for, I mean, there's no argument there. Anyway, I'm happy to be here this morning. I'm happy you're here with me this morning, live and direct on Q4 Radio in the city of Chirac, state of Illinois, in the United States of America. We're going to keep striving. We're going to keep struggling. I guess I got a lot to get into because I absolutely want to share the second talk of the estranged wife of the leader of a movement, because of the Black Straight Pride movement, formerly known as the Black Decency movement, because I rail all the time about Black Puritanism. There are certain contaminations. We understand Uncle Tomism. We understand House Negroism. It's very clear to us what a sellout is supposed to look like. A lot of times they marry outside the race. A lot of times they take positions. They join the Republican Party. A lot of times they articulate positions that are blatantly anti-black. So everybody want to look at Wayne Brady or Clarence Thomas or Condoleezza Rice, and they'll look at them sellouts. And we call them Eurocentrics. We call them Oreo cookies, black on the outside, white on the inside. But there's a whole large segment of the community that is militant, that hates white folks, that only date and have sex within their race, that are ready to tear down the system, these militant, conscious, pro-black, pan-African, Afrocentric, Nguzu Sabo, read the history. Everywhere they got red, black, and green. Everywhere they can put it. Flags on their porches. They social media accounts are just full of all of the black militancy, black pride, black revolution. They online posing with shotguns, talking about they ready for war, ready for revolution. But those people, their fundamental ideology is whiter, more Eurocentric than your average house Negro Uncle Tom. And this is very dangerous. This is very dangerous because these people are what you call assets of the system. So I'm not going to get, because I have some other things I need to touch on, but I want to share what goes on. And a lot of times these cultist, hyper-militant, hyper-masculine movements, they are often mocked by the masses, including myself. And I'm not going to say I'm guilty of it, because I don't feel guilty that it's wrong to mock these black Puritanist organizations, these hyper-militant, hyper-masculine, reactionary, black revolutionary reactionary. I don't feel bad in the least. So I'm not saying I'm guilty of it, but I do say I am a full-fledged participant in this. But even though we outside the movement, we looking from the outside can point fingers and laugh at the Umar and his duped followers and how he shook down his followers for 500,000, or how, you know, the irritated genie of Sophis and his partner, the Kush the Black Unifier, who've lectured they go not only all over the United States, they go to the black communities, they go to the African continent, they go to Europe, and there's a large black community in Europe, in Brixton, they go to the Caribbean and spread and recruit and spread their message. And the primary victims of these demagogues, and Minister Louis Farrakhan, the primary victim of these puritanical reactionary black militant, supposedly anti-Western, anti-white leaders are the members, are the people who buy into it. And I know people from outside the movement feel persecuted or attacked or mocked or maimed by what goes on within that movement, but the primary victims are the people who fully embrace and believe in the ideology, like most other cults. So I'm glad that someone so high, that's one of the founding members of Black Decency, or that has become Black Straight Pride movement, is speaking out and sharing her story very publicly, because it's embarrassing as hell. My wife and I have a great relationship, but I mean, if y'all put a cam up in our apartment, I mean, nobody wants their internal operations exposed. You know, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. My wife and I, we still argue after 20 years. She still hasn't figured out or accepted that I'm always right about everything in every way. So we still have our arguments, and that's our business. Nobody wants their business in the street. But puritanical movements and puritanical demagogic leaders set themselves up as the model, as the standard. So anyway, I know this ain't easy for her to do. But any woman under abuse, any woman under me that's being abused, I would want her to come out and speak out. So I'm sharing it. She put it out there and wants it to be out there, but she had to turn off the comments on the video. And it's weird that they're finally really starting to expose themselves. These movements are using terms like excommunication, excommunicado. They're using literally, late Dark Ages terminology, theocratic terminology, because that's what they are more so. Theocrats than they are political movements, theocratic movements. But I digress. There's some other things I want to touch on before we get on that. One thing I want to talk about is this emerging Kobe Bryant rhetoric that's also coming out of that same community. And I just want to touch on a couple of the conspiracies, because here come the conspiracy people, and bless their hearts. I feel hypocritical talking about conspiracy people, because I love conspiracies, number one. They're very entertaining to me. I've read Behold a Pale Horse. I've read The Unseen Hand. I've read Conspirators Hierarchy. I mean, you name one of those racist, white, crazy white boys, I've probably read them, especially coming up. It was good. I'm a big sci-fi fiction fan. I love dystopian post-apocalyptic stories about the downfall of society. I used to eat that up, and then you're able to fuse that with some real history and scenarios. Only person I haven't read from that era. I've read them, but I can't get through all of their stuff. Is David Yucky Ike, the reptilian. I can't hang with that. That's just too far flung. I mean, that's just uber nonsense. But anyway, a lot of black men, okay, I said this before, shamedly. If you find white folks doing something, I don't care if it's Mormonism, I don't care if it's bungee jumping. If white folks do it, you're going to find a segment of black people that are going to follow white folks wherever they go. And if white folks don't allow them, they're going to sit in, they're going to protest, they're going to sing spirituals to the white folks, let them in. So that's just something. If you got somebody in your family that can't help but do whatever weird stuff white folks are doing, that's integration. Integration is an impulse that we have to purge. But there are black conspirators. And now Dr. Umar, Tariq, and a lot of these black Puritans are talking this rhetoric about what's really up, what's really going on with Kobe's death. Now, I understand the motivation to do this because people eat this stuff up like I did. So if I came on YouTube or went on social media and talk about, this is really real, and I do the numerology, I break down the number of the helicopter, what time he took off, what latitude and longitude, and I could make up all kind of stuff about those numbers, and people will eat that crap up. It's more stimulating than reality, and if your life ain't where it's supposed to be, you can attribute that to some supernatural thing, or you want to believe that instead of just a revolution being about politics and bureaucracy and tactics and refinement of tactics and research and implementation and arguing and debating and discourse, that ain't, man. People want to believe that they're up against Lex Luthor level villains in the Illuminati, or even supernatural foes like the demonic Bilderbergs or reptilian shape-shifting reptiles. That's what a lot of people want to believe that they're fighting against, because it's more interesting. And hell yeah, it's more interesting. I've read comic books and played video games my entire life. So I know, I love it. Ain't nothing I like more than going to just spaz out, play some Gears of Wars and take on the Swarm. But then, that's not how my revolution is going to go, unfortunately. When I'm doing video games, I get to blow stuff up. When I'm doing Black Revolution, I got to sit here and go back and forth with people over tedious little stuff and take notes. So I understand that impulse, but we still have to make the distinction. Anyway, there are some emerging conspiracies around, and I don't like using the term conspiracy because there are conspiracies. People do conspire. People do construct secret agenda and implement those secret agendas in using methods to keep the implementation of that agenda away from the people they're imposing it on. Or they try to hide the fact that they have an agenda at all. There are real conspiracies. That's why the CIA actually created the term conspiracy theory, so that they could take ridiculous things about reptiles and fuse it with real things like COINTELPRO, like the CIA drug distribution to the hood, and then you take the CIA drug pipeline to put crack in the hood and to fund right-wing Contra rebels in Latin America, and making deals with so-called enemies of the state, where the CIA is engaging in treason against its own nation, selling weapons, illegal weapons to Iran and using Israel as a proxy, when they're doing all that real stuff. And then you throw in that same box reptilian shapeshifters and Masonic rituals and baby sacrifice. When you stir all that together, people be like, look at all, that's all just conspiratorial nonsense. So I don't even like using the word conspiracy, because conspiracies are real. They've been caught so many times. Hell, Trump is on trial in the Senate right now for a conspiracy. That was a secret cabal of diplomats, of cabinet members, of advisors who conspired secretly on behalf of the president. That was a legitimate conspiracy. There was nothing supernatural about it. You might say it's demonic or evil, but there are no supernatural forces There was no weirdo rituals, or maybe when he gets butt naked and sprays himself with that orange tan and does his hair swoop. That's not a ritual. That is manscaping. That is just him doing self-care. It's not, you know. Did he have on, when he called the president of Ukraine, did he have on a Masonic bib or something? I don't know. But even if it did, that ain't that relevant. So I hate calling things conspiracies, but let's just use the common language so we don't lose the masses. So there are conspiracy surrounding Kobe's death. And many of these conspiracies surrounding Kobe's death is nothing more than people trying to bring attention, or modern day, let's use some modern, bring clout. These are clout chasers. They want to somehow connect themselves to Kobe's death because everybody feels like they're connected to Kobe. I want to speak on that too. I don't know if I'll have time, but let's just rush through this. Let me just, number one, the overall overarching idea that there is a conspiracy to take down successful black men. And there are a lot of these black Puritans that was like, they just want to stop any black man from being successful. They just want to stop any black man with money, with fame, with power from succeeding. They want to bring down every successful black man. Who is they? First of all. So let's just come up with a hypothetical they. Is it the people who control the Federal Reserve Bank? Is it the people who are at the top of the nation's highest multinational corporations? Is it the people at the higher levels of the government, or maybe the two political parties, the Democratic or Republican Party? Are they white religious leaders? What segment of white power, of white men in authority or women, want to bring down successful black men overall? When you really start to say who is they, it starts to kind of crumble, this idea that successful black men want to be brought down. And here's why. The vast majority of white institutions of power, the vast majority of institutional wealth, of multi-generational institutional white wealth, the vast majority of these people profit greatly from these wealthy white men. If you see a black man who has $1 billion in his pocket, it's more likely than not that he has generated 10 times that amount of wealth for some white individual or white institution. I don't care if it's Jay-Z. You can see Jay-Z. There's a famous photo of him sitting across from Warren Buffett and Forbes, two of the wealthiest white men, and these men are mentoring him. What's his name? Mayweather is also being personally mentored by the richest, most successful investor in the history of capitalism, Warren Buffett. And you can find pictures online. So what is the incentive? How are the average black man that we define as successful, like a Kobe, like a R. Kelly, like a Bill Cosby, these well-known, even like Byron Allen, Michael Jordan, how are successful black men? I have some bad news for you. Successful black men are not a threat to the system. I remember there used to be these shirts that people were wearing, especially in the 90s, but they're still around today if you go to cultural events and cultural festivals. And the shirts say, danger, educated black man, or danger, educated black woman. And the shirt you ever see, you go to a construction site and there's a sign that says, danger, high voltage. They take that same sign and they remove the high voltage and they put danger, educated black man, danger, educated black woman. And when I first saw those shirts, I thought, clever. But as I started organizing in the black community, started, trying to cultivate and implement revolution and advocate for revolution amongst African people, I figured out the real meaning of that shirt. The danger sign is for black people because educated black people are a danger to the black masses. They're no threat to white folks. Who you think gave them that education? Did you think they educated them to hurt them? So I look at those shirts totally different now. Who's two of the most educated black people in the world right now with Harvard degrees, law degree, with the first black president of the Harvard Law Review, the black editor, first and only, Barack Hussein Obama. It don't come more credentialed. And who was he a danger to? Everybody but the establishment. So anyway, Whenever I try to look in depth at this idea that there is an overarching conspiracy to bring down specifically successful black men, it all crumbles when I try to get some details beyond that broad statement. They just want to bring, every time a brother gets something, they want to bring them down. Michael Jackson, they brought down Michael Jackson. They brought down Bill Cosby. They brought down O.J. Simpson. And when I step back and look at that, I'm like, they were making a lot of money off of these dudes. And these dudes not only were making money, these individuals went out into the world and promoted myths about America. That hard work and dedication and a little talent can allow you to reach to the heights of America. Many of these people are Republican. Many of them support Western agendas. Michael Jackson was going off to the Ukraine under Bill Clinton and support Bill Clinton's atrocities in the Ukraine and going to orphanages and doing PR way back. Remember, I did a whole segment on when they used Louis Armstrong to tour Africa to aid and to infiltrate Africa and overthrow Patrice Lumumba's Congo. Like, why would the white man deny himself these valuable assets of wealthy black men who support the status quo? It would make no sense. If every single wealthy black man was taken down tomorrow, it would greatly delegitimize the systems and institutions of white domination. The presence of wealthy black men and black billionaires and black mega moguls, black barons, black presidents, black cops who are just as deadly and violent against poor black people as white cops. If all of them successful black men disappeared tomorrow, the system would have less legitimacy. It would face more direct opposition. So when I ask these people like, they just trying to bring down Bill Cosby, I'm like, who specifically wanted to bring down Cosby? And for what purpose? Who was Cosby specifically a threat to? Every way I look at it, from every single angle I look at it, Cosby was an asset to the enemies of our people, and Cosby was a liability to the black community in every way possible. Bill Cosby was at the height of the crack epidemic when the Cosby Show came out in the 80s. At the same time, in reality, the black community was being economically, socially, and culturally deconstructed and dismantled by Reagan trickle-down neo-libertarian, neoliberal policies. All of the progress we made in the 50s and 60s, all of the stuff that our ancestors marched, got bit by police dogs, sprayed with water hoses, and our great black leaders got assassinated for, all of that progress, all of those policies, all of those concessions we fought and run from the system were being systematically destroyed and eroded under the Reagan administration. And at that exact same time, Reagan passed the baton to Bush, Bush passed the baton to Clinton, and they all had the same policy. And at that same time, one thing that will help you to oppress people is if they're under the illusion of progress. The illusion of progress is more deadly than open, blatant oppression. So there is no conspiracy to take down successful black men. What is the real conspiracy? Well, you saying, don't run and say Brother Diallo saying, ain't nobody trying to hurt black people. Yes, they are trying to hurt black people. There is no conspiracy to bring down successful black men. In fact, there is a conspiracy to handpick as many black people, men and women as possible and put them in positions that are highly visible and prominent all over the world. There is a conspiracy to uplift successful black men. Here's the real conspiracy overall. If you need a blanket, there's a conspiracy to sustain the status quo. In the status quo, black people are at the bottom of that status quo. There is a conspiracy to hold black people in our current political, economic, social, military status, to keep us in a position, as Dr. Claude Anderson said, as non-combative, non-competitive population that exists for the profit, comfort, and pleasure of the white people, of the dominant class, of the elites. That's what the conspiracy is. And most 99% of wealthy, prominent, famous black people help the dominant system maintain the status quo. There is no overarching conspiracy to bring down successful black people. But do successful black men and women fall off? Yes, they go crazy. They lose their ever-loving minds. Michael Jackson mutilated his African features. He lost his mind and went and built a never land in the middle of nowhere. So yes, when people become famous, they do go crazy. And they lose their mind, and they very often lose their lives. Jimi Hendrix, Bobby Birds, Otis Reddings, a lot of them aren't even sellouts or Uncle Toms or house Negroes. That's a heavy cost to bury. And people, even Prince. Prince was in a position, Prince would be alive right now if not for his fame. Because he was on a private jet, and they took him to the hospital, and they were like, dude, we need to put you on an IV. We need to get some x-rays. We need to help you. And he says, I'm Prince. Who you think you talk? Fire up my private jet. Take me to my private mansion, my private estate, and let me deal, because people get in their heads. Hell, it's almost tax return time. You're going to have cousins and aunties and brothers that you can't even talk to for the next 2-3 weeks when they get them tax return checks. So imagine if every day of your life was tax return day. People would lose their minds. So yes, you have this thing called affluenza. You have these concepts where these African people, they lose it with the fame and the money. Maybe that would still happen even in a Pan-African society. There's a whole book, power corrupts. And when people think power corrupts, they just means that power corrupts in terms of makes you want to do bad things like, Trump. But power corrupts doesn't just mean external corruption, stealing money, fixing elections, harassing women and your subordinates, or exploiting the people. Power also internally corrupts. It corrupts your psyche. Isolation drives human beings crazy because human beings are the most socially oriented primates on the face of the earth. So when you isolate somebody, and yes, one form of isolation we understand is you take an incarcerated man with no power, no agency, and you lock him in a cell away from everyone else. That's one form of isolation. But being a billionaire on a planet full of poor people, being a multi-millionaire on a planet full of peasants, is another form of isolation. You have class isolation. And when people have that type of elite isolation, they start to develop delusions of grandeur. They start to believe the hype. I should have put that in the rotation. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype coming from the outside. But a lot of times we have to not to believe the hype coming from us. But you've been running around in arenas or standing on stages. So there is no conspiracy. There is no background conspiracy to destroy successful black men. There is, in fact, a background conspiracy to lift up successful black men and use them as instruments or agents of capitalism and white domination. So every time a wealthy black man falls off, I'm not saying that it wasn't part of that he was brought down, but you got to show me some evidence beyond he was successful and now he fell off. You got to show me some evidence. You got to show me some. Don't even show me evidence. Just give me a logical explanation. How was Bill Cosby a threat to anything our oppressors were doing? Because I can show you concrete evidence where Cosby was an asset to the system, where Cosby embraced the system, where Cosby was profiting the system. But you can't show me where he was a threat. And you would say, well, they just do it because they're evil? Just for kicks? Okay, fine. Show me that. Oh, let's just bring down Cosby for the fun of it. And I know a lot of it's been everywhere. And when I come up, people get mad as hell because they just want to believe that if not for the Illuminati, Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, and all these other successful black men, if not for being taken down, O.J. Simpson would right now be using his wealth and fame to help uplift the black masses, to fund black revolution. I don't know what y'all would have imagined if the white man hadn't brought them down, what they'd be doing right now. I speculate they'd be doing the same thing they did before they were brought down. Doing work on behalf of the system, taking their meager rewards from the work on behalf of the system, and living the whitest life of hyperconsumption. So if you try to put Kobe in that same box of successful black man, the system must be brought down. No one. There is a conspiracy to maintain black people in oppression. And the vast majority of quote unquote successful black people participate and aid in that conspiracy. They don't fight against it. They represent the interest of their class more so than the interest of their people. Everyone's known that Donald Trump was a racist since the 60s and 70s. But Donald Trump has pictures and was befriended Russell Simmons, Mike Tyson, and all these wealthy black people on down the line. All were friends and associates of Donald Trump. And just like Donald Trump is exposed to be an overt racist, there are a lot of covert racists right now that got some black rich friends. And there's black people will sell out the whole race just for an opportunity to walk on a red carpet or just for an opportunity to go to some highfalutin cocktail party. They will sell us all down the river. They've been doing it since slavery and before that, since the beginning of colonization. So I don't buy the conspiracy that just bring down a successful black man. But then there's this another really, really, really stupid ass. I mean, I just want to throw punches. I'm going to throw some punches here. Give me a second. I just have to throw some punches here. I can't. I got monitors in front of me and this equipment. I can't really do it like Dita showed me. But I just have to, because I'm so mad. I'm just so annoyed. There's another conspiracy that say that Kobe, because you might say, brother, Diallo, you talking about you want to know what they were doing against the system to make the system move on them? Brother, Kobe was fighting Big Pharma. I literally have had this discussion. Kobe was fighting Big Pharma. Kobe was going to war against the pharmaceutical industry. Man, one more punch. Let me make this one a good one. Yeah. Okay, that's it. I'm good done throwing punches. But man, what the hell is wrong with y'all? What the hell is wrong with y'all? First of all, this company Kobe was fighting with, this big pharma company Kobe was fighting with. You think Kobe was fighting to get mercury out of our medicines? You think Kobe was fighting Big Pharma so that they stop putting fetal tissue so we don't be cannibalizing each other for medicine? You think he was fighting Big Pharma so that makes drugs more affordable to our senior citizens, to bring down the prices of insulin and statin drugs? You think he was fighting Big Pharma to make it a socialize it? You know, you think he was fighting Big Pharma to help more African people get into the pharmaceutical industry and get into the sciences so they can go into these industries and represent the interests of our community? Huh? What do you think he was fighting with Big Pharma? First of all, he wasn't fighting with Big Pharma. He was not in any way in opposition to Big Pharma. What do you think classifies as Big Pharma? The pharmaceutical company he was in litigation with is called High Tech Pharmaceuticals. Their most recent report, I pulled it up. There's Owler.com. It is an investment website. And if you want to invest in or buy into or get information on any type of company, you just put the company name in there and they give you all the stats on the company. The CEO of this company is this guy named Jared Wheat, right? And you can get his whole history. He is not a mover. He is not a shaker. He's not a baker. But this company, this big pharma company that he's fighting, has revenues of $4 million a year. $4 million a year. Kobe Bryant wipes his butt with that kind of money. It don't mean... that's what it is. And what medicine do they make? What valuable medicines or insidious toxic medicine that Big Farm that does high tech make? They make muscle drugs and penis drugs. The stuff you can buy at, what's that place called? I know, GNC. They make GNC workout drugs, and these literally, it's snake oil. It's a snake oil company. They got a pill called lipoprene hardcore, rapid release, the world's most advanced weight loss drug ever developed. It has not been approved by the FDA. They have H2O explosion, a diuretic. Where's the muscle stuff? Armistine, powerful estrogen blocker. It's the muscle drugs. And so they had this I mean, just look, and they got like neon colors on their pill boxes. They out here. This is the big pharma. They sell melatonin. Uh-oh, don't tell Umar that they sell melatonin. Oh gosh. Oh, they were grinding up Kobe's melanin. I don't. They sell melatonin. ECA extreme fat burner. That's the kind of stuff this is the big pharma that Kobe was in litigation with, because they wanted to name one of their muscle powders Black Mamba muscle powder. And so Kobe said, no, that's my brand. I'm selling shoes. I'm the one selling crap to the masses to make money, to exploit the masses and get money off my name. You ain't gonna come and sell crap to the masses of using Black Mamba. That's my name. And I'm not associated. But before he even went to court against high-tech pharmaceuticals, the government patent office, the federal government already told Kobe, you cannot trademark or copyright Black Mamba. Just remember when Spike TV came out and Spike Lee sued Spike TV and said, oh, you can't use Spike TV because that's Spike Lee. That's my brand. And they told Kobe, you better, they told Spike, boy, if you don't go sit down somewhere. And so when High Tech came out with Black Mamba Hyper Rush with a snake in neon green and his long-lasting energy, mental focus, extreme weight loss. They also have Black Piranha, become the predator, not the prey. So they have this whole series of drugs, Black Mamba, Black Piranha, that they sell. And Kobe was like, you're not getting money off my name. And the federal government told Kobe in 2019, that's not your name. You don't own that name. We're not going to allow you. His patent was denied. His copyright was denied. His trademark was denied. He had no case. And at the time of his death, he was at the negotiation table. So it is very likely that Kobe probably could have bought in and went ahead and endorsed the product, because they were allowed to go ahead. They had no even if they were, number one, it's not Big Pharma. Number two, they were already winning the case. Number three, Kobe was not even fighting Big Pharma, let alone a threat to Big Pharma. And I'm sure if the money was right, Kobe would have been a spokesman for Big Pharma. What are you talking about? It's embarrassing. And then they say the NBA wanted to take him down. Do you know how much money the NBA has lost from Kobe's undue demise? So, regardless of how you feel about Kobe, I already know how y'all feel. Y'all love Kobe. My goodness, I didn't know. I don't know. And y'all need to tell me. Y'all don't be telling. There was that one white guy that used to tour around like a colonizer and eating people's exotic food, and he committed suicide. And everybody was weeping and wailing and moaning and gnashing their teeth. I didn't even know who this dude was. I knew who Kobe was. My son didn't. My son got a text, and he came and said, Kobe passed away. My wife and I had already known. So I turned to him. No, my wife turned to him, actually, and said, Kobe, who's Kobe? And he dropped his head. He had no idea. My sons don't. I asked my son, how many basketball players can you name? And he said, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. That's it. Anyway, there's a couple of other conspiracies I can't even get into because I'm short on time, and I don't want to throw any more little corny little punches. I know y'all might turn that into a gif or a meme or something, but I just want to punch. I feel like, that scene in Boys in the Hood when he came, him and his homies faced some police discrimination, and he came home and went over his girl's house and started throwing those punches. and she had sex with him. How many young black dudes in the hood in the early 90s went to their girl's house and started punching the air thinking didn't work, did it? I know it didn't work for me either. So that movie was a lie. Cuba Gooding and John Singleton lied to us. Anyway, that's how I feel when I see this kind of stuff. I'm like grown ass men. Dr. Umar got a PhD, player hater degree. I mean, you should know better. And I guess we want people to be more than what they are. And let me be on record, because people are mad at me. They don't think I show proper reverence to Kobe. But let me say his death was a shock and it was tragic. And so that I agree with the masses. A lot of other stuff y'all talking, I can't ride with y'all. Daddy, girl, daddy. Y'all weird. Y'all weird. But what for do? What for do? Let's move on, man. Let me talk about before I put on this next thing that I think we should all hear. Let's talk about Black Puritanism and what's the problem with it. Black people, we can't get liberated unless we purge Black Puritanism. And Puritanism, I don't know, do I need to go into do we know what Puritanism is? It's basically a Protestant sect and Protestant ideology. But the thing that's most interesting about and unique about Puritanism is the most capitalistic thought process, the most capitalistic religion or ideology. And there's secular Puritanism now and puritanical values. Puritanism came about at the same time that capitalism, that the mercantile system and the monarchical system was transforming into Republican, Democratic, not Republican Party, but Republican in terms of rule of law instead of rule. So at the time that old Europe of the Dark Ages, Europe of the Middle Ages, was giving way to the modern Europe of going from agrarian society to the first industrial revolution, going from monarchical society to elected governance, going from small scale industry to large scale factory, going from mainly self-employment or sustenance agriculture to wage employment. At that epoch of history, at that time of the Protestant Reformation and the evolution of the European religion and evolution of European economics, and at the beginning of what I was taught in school was the age of exploration that we now understand to be the age of genocide, colonization, and slavery, Protestantism formed. Protestantism suckled on the same teat as capitalism. Western culture is the mother that suckled capitalism on one teat and Protestantism on the other teat. So Protestantism is deeply woven. For a long time, Catholicism had a lot of trouble catching up. Eastern Orthodox religion and Catholicism, those two churches that were one and split, had to reform and catch up with the modern era. But Protestantism was down from day one. Protestantism is capitalism day one. And so that's why it is so pervasive, where even though you find people who reject Western culture, they live in according and are most comfortable with Protestant. But what is Protestantism? The ideal of Protestantism, and remember that Protestantism and Puritanism is a more refined form of Protestantism. But Protestantism is the bastard offspring of Catholicism. And Catholicism goes all the way back to the founding of Western power, Western civilization. The earliest Western civilization were quote unquote pagan. When Greek city-state folded over into the Roman Empire, they went from what could be called polytheistic or pagan religions to a monotheistic state religion. And so from the monotheistic theistic state religion, the empire grew, it collapsed, and then reemerged in the form of Western European imperialism. I hate jumping like this. I wish I could go into detail, but damn, it's 8:01. I was supposed to be already through with this topic. Damn. Anyway, I have to rush through this. Puritanism. What are the fundamental Puritan values or ideas that somewhat set itself apart? You know, because remember, Judaism was about rituals. How were you a good person? Through rituals. You know, if you did something wrong, you had to go slaughter a cow. You had to hold to the law, keep the Sabbath. The idea of Judaism was that man got salvation through keeping the law and rituals. No matter how you felt. If you had dirty thoughts, unclean thoughts, God didn't care about your thoughts. He cared about your actions. And then Catholicism came and said, God cares about your thoughts. And it's not so much the rituals as it is to your subordination. You had to go to an authority. You had to go to the priest or to the rectory or to the father or to the pope, and they would absolve you of your sins. So you had to confess your sins and all of that, but the rituals were greatly reduced. But you just had to be loyal to the church, follow the church, and the church was your salvation instead of. And then Protestantism said, nope, you don't need to do all these rituals. No, you don't need to go to a higher godly authority on earth. You yourself, within yourself, through your own prayers, through your own accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, it's all on you. And you can solve. Where one or two are gathered in my name, I am there among you. So Protestantism took away the legitimacy of the Pope, the legitimacy of the priest, and it took away the hurdles to divinity that the church has set up. Again, this is an obscene overview, but if y'all want, y'all let me know. We can go into deep dives into all this Western psychopathology. Anyway, fundamental Puritan values are inherent corruption and sinfulness of man. We are dirty birds. We nasty. Anything that comes from nature and from us is nasty, dirty. That's the fundamental idea. That if you are left to your own devices, you are going to go astray. So you need parameters. You need blockages. You need to be controlled. Also, the work ethic. For the first time, the concept of a worth ethic. And we all, at one point, if we were raised in the West, have heard of the Protestant work ethic. That hard work unto itself is a virtue. Even if your hard work doesn't amount to anything. Even if you're doing something that is of really no true value of anybody, if you work hard at it, that alone is a virtue. So you could literally have a society full of sick and starving people, and you spend all your brilliance making a penis erection pill, instead of using that brilliance to really address the real problems of the society. And as long as you work hard at that, you will be rewarded, you will be greatly admired. The fear of nature. That nature is inherently in opposition to people. That man must fight nature, man must conquer nature, man must be apart from nature. Not just the nature, the trees and the brooks and the creeks and the crickets, but be apart from his own nature and what comes naturally to him. Respect for law and authority. Now this is like I said, it's the bastard offspring of Catholicism, so it didn't abandon all things. But this isn't divine authority. Remember, under Catholicism, the Pope was the higher authority than even the kings. And every king lived in fear of being excommunicated from the church, because then his political authority is chained. But now you don't need divine authority. You don't respect political authority because it is sanctioned by the church. It doesn't need church sanctioning. Authority is respectable unto itself without even anything to validate, divine to validate. So respect for authority. Then the concept of the elect of God. And the concept of the elect of God, which was really pushed by the Calvinists, which is another subsect of Puritanism. There's one God that spawned a million religions. You know, that's why there's really no such thing as polytheism. Even the Bible is polytheistic. In the Bible, there are some passages that say that if man looks upon God, he will disintegrate. God's grandeur, God's greatness is too vast for man to look upon. God is this overwhelming supernatural force that man can't come into direct interaction with. And then other things, you got man wrestling gods and angels, and men sitting on rocks just having a chat, smoking a joint with God. There are many different gods in the Christian Bible, in the monotheistic religion. Anyway, the elect of God is the concept that divine blessings have material outcomes. Meaning that people who have the most money, people who have the most talent, people who have the most material status and wealth are blessed by God. And that's evidence of blessing. It's not evidence that you're a parasite. It's not evidence that you're a thief. It's not even evidence that you work and earn and you're really diligent and a really competent investor. It is evidence that God has blessed you. And remember, Kanye said when they announced he made $68 million, he was one of the top paid artists in 2019. Towards the end of 2019, Kanye said, God is using me to show out. So it wasn't the sweatshops. It wasn't his wife's on internet titty pictures. It wasn't him sucking off the MAGA movement and getting that white money, white suburban racist money, and catering to an audience and stabbing his own people, being a house. It wasn't none of that. It was God. That's Calvinism. And so the people with the material wealth are the people with the best knowledge, with most worthy to rule over us. And then literalism. Now, this is biblical literalism, but literalism can apply to anything. Absolutism, everything at its word. No adornment, meaning that you don't want to dress yourself up, you know. And at this time when Protestantism came, it was very common for men to wear makeup. In fact, men were the number one consumers. They would powder their faces. They would put on beauty molds. They would wear these elaborate silken wigs and these robes. Just go look at a Victorian era, dress. And men were very, very, that's why this whole concept of what's manly and what isn't. If you weren't wearing buckle shoes with a big gold buckle and silky frilly socks and a powdered wig and some knickers and a cummerbund, if you weren't walking around the street like that, you weren't a real man. So what is a man? It evolves, it changes, it ebbs and flows. Simplicity in thinking. No more complex thought, philosophy, contemplation. You didn't question things. Everything was cut and dry, black and white, up is down, forward, back, good and evil, black and white. No nuance. Simplicity in thinking. The concept of perpetual struggle. War, you should always be in conflict and war. There is someone always out to get you. There's the external struggle, God and the devil, and the internal struggle of man versus his nature. Man's higher self versus his lower self. Always struggling, always in conflict. Divine rewards and punishments. The concept that you can't, that rewards, that if you are being punished, if you're suffering, it's divine, and you're rewarded, it's divine. It's beyond you. So divine word. And then family life. Being devoted to family above all, building up family. And the concept of family is the nuclear family. Daddy as the Godhead. Father as the Godhead. Wife as the servant and the incubator. Children as property of the Father. Children owned by the Father. And finally, zealotry. You demonstrate your worthiness, you demonstrate your love of God by beating the hell out of anybody that don't agree with you. Zealotry is a mandate. And Puritanism, and we were taught coming up, the Puritans were just these pious people, and that's what it means. They are pure, meaning that they don't do bad things, they don't say. But Puritanism was actually a derogatory term. You purify things by burning them. Meaning that you don't tolerate anything from the outside. You don't tolerate any divergence. And now, so when you look at a lot of black movements, Nation of Islam, Black Straight Pride movement, people like Umar's regressive form of Pan-Africanism, when you look at a lot of black militant black nationalist movements, you find so many of these elements. In fact, I even went to the Black Straight Pride website. Let me pull that up. I went to the Black Straight Pride website and look, their mission statement. The mission statement is, our mission is to put the black man with the black woman to build a strong, functional, prosperous families, communities, and nations. And that's Puritanism, that the family is the fundamental unit, that everything else will flow from. And this is a very Western idea. But then I went to uh, other right-wing, white, some racist organizations' websites. I went to some right-wing, ultra-right Republican cultural. And every single one of them, in their mission statement, had something related to the family. Just like that, making that the core. Like, just one, focus on the family. Their mission statement is to cooperate with the Holy Spirit in sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with as many people as possible. How are they going to do that? By nurturing and defending the God-ordained institution of the family. So, prosperous families, black man and woman come together. Prosperous families will lead to prosperous communities and nations. Focus on the family says we will, the Holy Spirit and gospel through nurturing of the family. And the nuclear family is another thing where I talked about capitalism and Protestantism coming up together. The nuclear family, the modern formation of the family, father, son, child, dog, picket fence, that is a relatively new phenomenon. All around the world, family formations did not take the form of just a father, just a son, because people understood that even though you need a man and a woman to produce a child, it took way more than a man and a woman to cultivate a child. They understood that children were raised in communities, even though they were birthed by individuals, they have to be raised by communities. So the idea of the family, even in the Bible, a Bible is a man and his wife and his concubine, a man and his multiple wives, a man, his wife, and the mother of his deceased wife, the man, his wife, and his mother, who becomes a de facto wife if the father dies. There is nowhere in the family, in the Bible, where you can find that they say the family is a mother, father, child. Even though they say explicitly, whatever formation that a family takes, the man is the Godhead, and the woman is subordinate, or the women are subordinate to the man. And from King David to King Solomon, many of the most prominent men who were the elect of God had multiple wives. So when black people, we were inculcated, one thing, number one, a lot of people who take these Protestant ideas swear they're being African. And they can even go to the African continent today and to find black men on the continent that talk this same nonsense, that advance these same fundamental westernized ideas. And they forget, or they don't like to point out, that many of these Africans were colonized. And they were subjected to over 2 centuries of ongoing Eurocentric indoctrination. At the same time, they were subjected to the purging of their own indigenous culture, values, philosophies. Libraries from Egypt to Timbuktu were burned to the ground. Ideas, philosophy, concepts were lost to us. And what we did was take white concepts and wrap them in kente cloth and say they're African. And there are a lot of elements of Western culture that are very attractive to many black people, especially black men. The idea that the man is the Godhead, the man is the final say, very attractive. The fact, what they call the abomination of homosexuality. And they say homosexuality isn't African. And I'm like, fine, let's head to Africa. And I'm like, wow, all the anti-sodomy laws were put there by the colonial governments. Every single one. I'm trying to find an indigenous anti-sodomy law. The subordination of women. And you go to North Islamic Africa, and they say the women, where you find Islam in Saudi Arabia is a world away from the Islam of Senegal, where women can't even drive cars in Saudi Arabia until last year. Women run the markets. The backbone of the communal economy of Senegal is overseen by women. Because the idea is that women are the child bearers. They are the nurturers. So who better to manage the distribution of wealth than somebody who can have 3 or 4 or 5, 6 kids that they all love equally, and they're able to dole out resources to those children. So they said, bring those same equalities of a loving, nurturing mother to the economy. And it has worked out pretty well, aside from French colonialism and Arab imperialism. If not for that. So many of our movements that are African, militant, anti-white on the surface are nothing more than white Puritanism in blackface. And when those movements succeed, whether they succeed on a grand scale and you have a black nation or black regional power, or they succeed on a smaller scale where they have a prominent organization or even a prominent individual or family, eventually with that internal corruption, one of two things are going to happen. That type of mentality, that Western puritanical mentality, will either, number one, make us internally corrupt and perpetuate internal conflict, and will make us unsuccessful in sustaining the new established black power, black organization, black nation, or it would make us vulnerable or susceptible to further foreign encroachment and imperialism and occupation, because the ideas that govern our state align with the ideas of the oppressive, capitalistic, Judeo-Christian nations or Islamic nations. So either way you cut it, even in the short term, because, and it's easy to go that route with Protestantism if you want to build, simply because all black people you encounter, these are familiar ideas. And it's easier to start a movement based on ideas that people, even if the people don't agree with them, familiarity already puts you 10 steps ahead. If you're trying to promote new ideas or alien concepts to a people, even if those new ideas and alien concepts are beneficial, you're going to have a hard row to hoe. People will prefer familiar pain to unfamiliar or alien relief. People will prefer a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven. So a lot of things we identify as African or Afrocentric are nothing more than Protestant, puritanical, Western ideas that have been a part of our communities for so many decades and centuries. And then people might have the illusion to say, hey, these ideas are what? The strong family and all these Western ideas. And by strong family, they don't mean strengthening families. The same people that most aggressively promote strong families create economic and social conditions that people cannot form and sustain healthy bonds and cultivate healthy children. So that strong family, a strong family is a family where the man has ultimate say and the woman is subordinate. That's what a strong family in this context means. You know, if I'm able to go home and say, where's my meal, woman? Sit down, pull off my boots, and put on some soft music and do a little dance. That's a strong, stable family. Because if the woman says, you go to hell, then that's a vulnerable family. A woman with her own ideas asserting her will over a man, that's a weak family. So when I say, but again, y'all can cut and paste this statement however y'all want. Y'all gonna do it anyway. I got some people that, but anyway, I digress. So they say these ideas are so familiar to our people. And when you're trying to fight a revolution, and at the same time you're trying to revolutionize the society, you have to revolutionize your own people whom you're fighting the revolution on behalf of. That's very hard, and it's very slow, and it's very painful, and it's a very much a 1 step forward, 20 step backwards type process. So a lot of people take this shortcut instead of revolutionizing my community, instead of introducing true African concepts or revolutionary concepts to my people, I would just glom on to what they already believe. And I would use what they already believe and use that as the foundation for the movement. But that's what Elijah Muhammad did. If you look at the Nation of Islam, Elijah Muhammad, you'll see that much of his Islam comes straight out of Baptist, old school Baptist preacher. It has very little similarity to Islam you find anywhere else. That's even what Garvey did. Garvey said our people are agricultural, our people are Christian, they're capitalist. So instead of trying to purge Christianity and commercialism and capitalism from my people, I'm just going to do an African version of it. So Garvey was a Christian, Garvey was a capitalist. There are some elements of that, like agrarianism, that maybe were viable. But it's very, very easy to do that, but it's a high risk endeavor. The failure rate is very high. So I would say, even if you're going to be, number one, acknowledge it to the people that you're promoting Puritanism. And educate them about. So at least if we're going to do this Puritan stuff, if y'all going to do it, I'm not doing it because I don't think it works. Black Puritanism to me is going to have the same historical trajectory as white Puritanism. But at least tell the people, stop saying you're promoting Afrocentric and Prince of Pan-Africanism, or even trying to pretend like you're Islamic. You know, just tell the people, listen, we're going to use puritanical values that come out of the founding fathers, that come out of the caves and hills of Europe. And we're going to Africanize them. We're going to use them because this is what the white man used to get ahead. So maybe we can do a black version of this to get ourselves ahead. At least be honest with the people of what you're doing and why you're doing it and where you got that stuff from. You know, if I was going to promote Puritanism as a viable, if I was going to promote Marxism, then I'd call myself a Marxist. If I was going to promote Puritanism, I wouldn't call myself a Pan-Africanist. I would call myself a Black Puritanist. I call them that. But we see these movies don't. These movements always fall short. And they always begin to cannibalize themselves. But then they do have out the gate success rates. But they always hit this wall of stagnation. And the oppressors understand that even if a movement is running around calling down the white man, like the irritated genie got on the stage, he was on Fox News calling Obama a fag and calling for the fall of the white man and defeat of the white man and telling black people to arm themselves. The white man was like, yeah, go boy. And Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad run around calling the white man the devil. The oppressors understand fundamentally, as long as their core foundational ideas spring from the Industrial Revolution, from the Protestant Reformation, if the core of their ideas spring forth from our culture, then it doesn't matter whatever they sprinkle on top, militancy, anti-whiteness, anti-capitalism, whatever rhetoric they sprinkle on top, as long as the foundation is secure, as long as the roots of what they're doing, they're not a true threat. That's why Malcolm, I say this all the time, Malcolm ran around the racist America calling the white man the devil and saying, arm yourself, take up arms, black man, and kill the dog. If they send them dogs on you, kill that dog. And if one of them come for one of you, then take them out. And if a whole clan comes with you, if they come to lynch you, make sure you take at least one of them clansmen with you. He ran around all over the country saying that. And the white man, he'd show up at the airport, stamp his passport, let him go over, let him go wherever he wanted to spread that message. But then Malcolm did his Hajj to Mecca. And on the way back from Mecca, he stopped in Africa and started talking to Africans, real revolutionary Africans. And he came back and said, wait, I'm no longer going to be a black Muslim or having a religious movement. I'm going to have myself a secular, rational, secularism. What? He's done with this tribal rhetoric, with this puritanical rhetoric, with this pseudo Judeo-Christian Islamic cult. He's going to get out of all that. He's a threat now. Now we got to remove him. And fortunately, the very cult that he is leaving is as enthusiastic as the government to take the brother down. So we have a lot of assets and allies, because they understand what's a real threat, and we need to understand what is a threat and what is an asset to the movement. Anyway, Q4 Radio, Bro Diallo, AM 1680. Let's go into the last part of this, because I think this is important to hear. Oh, excuse me. This is part 2 of what I played Wednesday on the show. You can find the archives at the Bro Diallo show. And I think this message needs to be heard. And I would encourage you. I will post these 2 segments, the irritated X Files. So because I think there are a lot of black people in a lot of these movements, Nation of Islam, the Black Hebrew Israelites, a lot of these militant movements, a lot of these black puritanical movements that are greatly suffering. And one of the women who was at the height, at the helm, the queen mother, the first lady of one of these black puritanical movements and ideologies, who is speaking out about the abuse she suffered as a direct product of not just the leader, but the fundamental ideology. Her abuser used a black nationalist ideology to justify and is continuing to persecute her. And the followers of this movement who are there to protect the black family are attacking a young black mother who has suffered years of abuse. But they're telling these are the same people who founded the black decency movement and says that founding black families will save us. And I'm saying, yeah, we do need families, but we need to redefine what a family is. It's not father, Godhead, subordinate wife, and property, children being your voiceless properties. You want a voiceless spouse and a voiceless offspring. That is not African. And that is not in anything that will serve our interest of our people. So, without further ado, I'm going to play for the remainder of the show, segment 2. You can listen Q4 Radio, or if you're in Chicago, AM 1680 on the TuneIn app, iTunes Radio, Q4.org, or you can always go to the website to listen, and you can find the archives of the show at diallokenyatta.com. And of course, thank you to my Patreons. Become a Patreon, become a sponsor, an investor, a supporter of Pan-African analysis when you get a chance, if you have the opportunity.
We're here. This is like the continuation of the conversation that my sisters